afternoon, everybody. It's Rita Smith, the #1 food fairy, and today I'm going to take you through a multi-step process on how to make lasagna. And I want to give credit where credit is due. I learned in the first instance how to make lasagna from my sister Jean Cugliari. She's Irish and Norwegian by birth, but Italian by marriage. And honestly, if she had not walked me through the original process of how to make the sauce and layer lasagna, I'd still be flailing around to this day. So what is going to happen, and I'll do this in separate videos as I did the Greek dinner so that you can see one portion at a time or all of them in one run if you want to, but otherwise it'd be like a 50-minute video, too long for everybody to watch. Lasagna consists of a tomato sauce, a pasta sauce, which I have made myself, homemade, and mine is a 3-day process. We can talk about that. You can do it in a lot less time, but people always rave about mine, and that is because I spend so much time on it. So there's a tomato sauce. Of course, you're going to need lasagna noodles. I use 3 different kinds of cheese, which is Parmesan, ricotta, and mozzarella. I use a combination of, well, the sauce, I'll get to that in a moment. So in the layering of the lasagna, there is sauce. I'll talk to you about that separately. There is noodles. They're fairly straightforward, but I'll chat with you about that too. There is a cheese center. The ricotta cheese center, I find, is the make or break portion of the lasagna. And over 30 years, I have figured out a cheese center that everyone likes. It's not too thick. It's not too sticky, it's not too cloying, it's kind of fluffy, it has garlic, it has pepper, it has a secret ingredient which you'll be surprised about. And so in the middle is the cheese layer, and then more pasta and more tomato sauce, and on top is mozzarella and Parmesan. So it's pretty straightforward. The word lasagna apparently in Italian simply means layers. And layers are what make the lasagna. You can make a seafood lasagna. I've made vegetarian lasagnas where I replaced the pasta with grilled zucchini, and my son David just loved it. I replaced the cheese middle with a squash middle that also had garlic and pepper, so it was fluffy, and eggs, and it was fluffy and was delicious, but it didn't have any dairy and any wheat. So lasagna just means layers. You can layer anything you want and call it lasagna. That's fine, but the traditional lasagna, as the Italians bake it, and as my sister taught me, has tomato sauce, several different kinds of cheeses, 3, 4, 5, I use 3, a cheese center, which I'll teach you my secret recipe for that, and then on top is generally a kind of a mozzarella Parmesan mix that melts in the oven, so when you bring it out, the lasagna has a beautiful golden crust across the top. That's lasagna. If you've never made one, it seems overwhelming, but actually once you've made 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, you can throw them together like quick. You got the tomato sauce, you got the pasta. It's not a complicated deal. I personally myself have found lasagna to be the most welcome gift that I've ever come up with. If I take the time, as I'm going to do today, I bought the aluminum pans, which I don't care if I ever see them again. I'm going to make a lasagna. I'm going to give it away for a present. For young families, for people who have someone sick in the family or in the hospital, or have just started a new job or moved to a new town, or people who have, once one of my neighbors, they lost all the heat in their house. The only thing they had left was the gas to their stove. And I brought them over a lasagna, and I said, here, if you bake this, it'll warm your kitchen and you'll have dinner. And it was like the most popular gift ever. So at Christmas every year, I don't give presents, I give lasagnas. They cost about $10 each, or give or take, depending on the size and how many I make. And, but I see no point to shopping around for tchotchkes that people have no place to put them, when I could give them a lasagna, and one day when they're too busy to cook, all they have to do is make a salad and dinner is done. So lasagnas are now my favorite go-to Christmas present, somebody's sick present, congratulations on your graduation present, congratulations on your new house present. I've never had anybody say, wow, I wish you did not bring me over that lasagna. So today is a combination of making lasagnas days and Christmas shopping day, because when I finish these lasagnas, a whole bunch of them are going to be earmarked for Christmas presents. Probably I should dedicate this video to Diane Gillies and Rockjutha and Finn and Violet, my favorite family from Westwood Avenue. I think they were the ones I brought the lasagna to when their heat went out, and they've never forgotten it. It lives in their memories that I just walked across 2 houses with a lasagna. It was like the tiniest effort that anyone could ever make, and it made such a lifelong impression on them. So today I'm going to not only teach you how to make a lasagna, but maybe think about the gift of food that you give to other people, and the impression it makes upon them. And if it makes that big of an impression, probably we should do it more often. So that's what I'm going to do when I'm done with this lasagna recipe. So Diane, hang in there, your lasagna is coming. Okay, so just for 1 second, let's talk about the pasta sauce, the tomato sauce. I spent 3 days on this, from a Friday night until a Sunday afternoon. In it is all kinds of whatever I got on sale, really high quality tomato sauce. Classico is great. Sobeys kind of store-bought Sensations is, not bad either. They both come in mason jars, which I love. Into the sauce went peppers, onions, every single kind of tomato sauce that I had ready to go. Canned tomatoes, diced tomatoes, chopped tomatoes, fresh tomatoes from the field in Ontario. As the sauce, which was originally up to the top of the pan, cooked down, I would add more tomatoes and more vegetables to it. I add quite a chunk of dirty chopped garlic. I went out to my garden and I got basil and oregano, fresh growing in my garden. I put that in. And then if I ever sense that it's getting drier than I want it to, or less liquid than I want it to before it's caramelized as much as I want it to, I add some red wine. I could also add, beef stock or chicken stock even, or whatever. But the point of the fact is that it cooks for a good long time. My 3-day cooking period is probably not realistic for most people. I have the pans, I have the will, and I pay attention to it for 3 days, but most people don't want to do that. So you could probably do this in, 4 or 6 or 8 hours, but the point is that you want to put your sauce together as you like it and let it cook for as long as you can, stirring regularly so that it caramelizes, that you'll actually see the red start to turn to a bit of a tan brown. It becomes very sugary sweet, and it caramelizes, and it's very thick. And so when people say to me, why does your lasagna taste so different? What is it about your lasagna that's so different from other lasagnas that I have had? It's because I cooked the sauce for so long. So it doesn't really matter what you decide you like in your sauce. The point that you can cook it overnight, or cook it for 8 hours, or cook it for 2 or 3 days as I do, is what actually makes the difference in the sauce. And if you're going to cook it for a good long time, you can never let it go below simmer. You can never let it go below, I think it's 180 by the food thermometer, so that it continues to make sure that bacteria don't grow. But if you have a good pan and your stove, you can go to bed at night and leave the tomato sauce on and wake up in the morning and you're fine. That's fine to do as long as you have the equipment with which to do it. So the longer and the slower that you can cook your tomato sauce to allow it to caramelize, the better the sauce will be. And that is really the secret of a super thick, super delicious lasagna. Okay, for the fluffy cheese middle of lasagna, here we go. This is my top secret recipe. I've only shared it with nobody before you. But here's what I have found over the years works. People don't like a big, thick clump of cheese in their mouth in the middle of a lasagna. I will oftentimes, when I used to just put like pure ricotta with maybe an egg to fluff it up a bit and a little bit of pepper in the middle of lasagna, I would find that part of the lasagna left on the side of the plate, which kills me because that's the part where you spent all the money. So what I have kind of developed over the years is a center for tasty lasagna that is fluffy enough and tasty enough for people to enjoy and eat the whole thing, not just a lasagna. And here's how I do it. For every 2 containers of ricotta cheese, I'm going to add 2 eggs. that will help make it fluffy. And the raw eggs bake in cooking, so that's not a problem. Okay, so for every container basically is an egg. Since I start with 2 containers, I'm going to use 2 eggs. And then to that I add about a cup of Parmesan cheese, which is about half of one of these containers. A cup, maybe a little bit more than a cup, okay? So that's where most of the Parmesan in the recipe is. I'm going to add some black pepper, as my sister Jeannie taught me. And then the tricky part is I'm going to add a can of Campbell's mushroom soup, which seems to help with the fluffiness and the creaminess and the flavorfulness. I love Campbell's mushroom soup. I use it all over the place. So into this pan, I have 2 containers of ricotta cheese. I have 2 raw eggs. I have some pepper. I have a can of Campbell's mushroom soup. And then to that, I'm going to add a really good chunk of durly chopped garlic. So this is going to give flavor to the center so that it is not, actually I'll get a spoon. I don't want to put cheese into my garlic. This is going to add flavor to the center so that rather than getting a bite of just bland white ricotta cheese, you're going to get some garlic and some pepper. It's going to be fluffy because of the eggs and the cream of mushroom soup. And when you put that in between the layers of the lasagna, it will add to the flavor, add to the texture, and just make everything more positive as far as I can see. Hang on, I'll give it a quick whip together. So that's about as long as that would take. And I'm going to taste it just to make sure that it has about as much pepper and garlic as I think it should have. That's good. I wouldn't add any more garlic to that. I might add a little bit more pepper. Okay. And then give it another quick mix. And that will be the middle of the lasagna, as you'll see momentarily when I start to put them all together. That is the ricotta Parmesan middle of the lasagna. If you love Parmesan, add more. If you hate garlic, add less. If you love pepper, add more. It's all up to you, which is why I don't give measurements, because it's kind of... you know, I can give you starting points, but then it's all up to you after that. What do you like? So this is going to be the middle of our lasagnas. And one of the good news points about ricotta and eggs and garlic and everything that's in here is it freezes great. So if you make too much of it, freeze it. And you can make manicotti or panini or anything later and use this cheese up in that recipe. So if you make too much, don't despair. Just toss it in the freezer. Okay, these are my lasagna noodles. I bought Etel pasta regular. I don't like the oven-ready lasagna noodles. I've never found them to be productive use of time because my sauce is so thick. I don't want my sauce to be thin. So if you use oven-ready noodles, you have to use thin sauce. If you're using thin sauce, you know, use oven-ready noodles. I cooked these in a pasta cooker, and then I dumped them immediately into cold water. They've been cooling the whole time I've been talking, so that when I set about to actually make the lasagna, I can handle these with my bare hands. I don't need tongs. I don't need, well, tongs. I don't know what else you would use. They're good. I can just use these noodles without burning my hands. They've been resting in cold water for about half of an hour now. And so I used regular lasagna noodles, Etel pasta. I did not buy oven-ready noodles, and they've been resting in cold water for about a half of an hour. I'm going to have a scissors handy because normally they don't exactly fit the size of the pan I'm using. But in a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds, I'm going to show you how you start layering the lasagnas. And everything, when you start layering the lasagnas, it's done ahead of time. Okay, the noodles are cooked ahead of time. The cheese middle is made ahead of time. The tomato sauce is made ahead of time, and I bought today grated mozzarella. Sometimes if it's cheaper, I buy it and grate it myself with my KitchenAid mixer, but today it was on sale for a pretty good price, so I bought a big giant bag of already grated mozzarella cheese, and so that is what is going to go on top of the lasagna, and we'll get to that in a second when I get my pans laid out. So here we are with everything that we need to put together a lasagna. We have tomato sauce, we have noodles, pasta, we have cooked, of course. We have the ricotta cheese middle and the mozzarella and the parmesan that goes on top. So the basic layering process goes like this. So I'm going to cover the bottom of the pan with tomato sauce. Okay. And you don't want to use any more than you have to, because generally speaking, your tomato sauce, you want to stretch it across as many lasagnas as you can. I'm going to take a noodle, which is resting in cold water. I've cooked them according to the instructions, and now they're resting in cold water, so they're easy for me to handle. Working with hot noodles right out of the pan is a bit of a task, and you're way better off to cook them and then strain them and then run cold water on them and make them a little bit easier to handle. Life is hard enough without burning your fingers on noodles. Okay, so we have one layer of tomato sauce and one layer of noodles. And now we're going to go back to a second layer of tomato sauce. And a second layer of noodles, which is pretty much the bottom of the lasagna. Okay, one more there. Okay, and I almost always have to cut my noodles to size. Very seldom do I have a pan where the size of the cooked noodles and the pan are exactly the same, no matter what the box says. So I keep my scissors handy. So now we have a layer of tomato sauce, a layer of noodles, a layer of tomato sauce, a layer of noodles, and what I'm going to put in now is the ricotta cheese middle. And this, in my opinion, well, along with the tomato sauce, makes or breaks the lasagna. If you have a tasty, fluffy, delicious cheese middle in the lasagna, and it's not so thick and plain and boring and cloying that people actually leave it off to the side of their plate, which is the sure sign that you need to do something with your lasagna middle. If it is flavorful and fluffy, people will eat it all, like, with pleasure, and that is in fact what you want to see happening when you bring a lasagna to the table. So oh, there's pepper in there for sure. There we go. We're making that nice and flattened out as much as we can. I think there's a couple of corners that I could fill here. Okay, we just don't want to have anybody get a piece of lasagna that doesn't have everything that they would hope it would have. Okay, so that's the cheese middle, the ricotta cheese middle of the lasagna. And now I am going to I'm going to put another layer of noodle. So get those ready. Whoop. Another layer of noodle. These noodles almost fit this pan, like almost fit this pan. And that one actually does. Okay. That one maybe could just... If the noodles are longer than the pan, they stick to the sides and they get crusty and crunchy. Kids don't like that. Kids won't eat that. So it's kind of a waste of a lasagna if you bother to let the noodles ride up the side. Okay, so on top of that set of pasta, I'm going to put some more sauce. And that's the last layer of sauce and noodles that I'm going to put for a very specific reason that you should know, because if you overfill your lasagna pan, which I have done on occasion because it's so tempting to just use up that last little bit of sauce or that last little bit of cheese, but the problem is then that the aluminum foil you're going to freeze the pan with sticks to the cheese on top, and when you pull the foil off, because it has nowhere to go, when you pull the foil off, all the mozzarella and Parmesan comes with it, which is not a good thing to have happen. Okay, so here we are with a layer of tomato, noodle, ricotta cheese middle, noodle, tomato, and now I'm going to put some mozzarella and some Parmesan. As I noted, I bought the mozzarella already grated, which was really super handy. It was on sale, a whole kilo for 15 bucks. I couldn't even buy mozzarella to shred it that cheaply. So I let them do the work for me this time. Although if I can't find anything on sale, I will often grate it myself, just running it through the KitchenAid blender attachment. It's not too much work. So there you go. We got mozzarella on top of that pizza, and we're going to top it off with some Parmesan, some sprinkly Parmesan, which turns nice and golden brown in the oven. Okay. There we go. Okay, so we're all Parmesan and mozzarella. We are nicely layered and ready for the freezer or the oven, whichever you're planning on doing today. And so I'm just going to grab a nice piece of aluminum foil and package it firmly, make it as airtight as I can. I will label it before I put it in the freezer. And in a moment, I'll show you how exactly the same amount of work that you spent making the sauce and purchasing the ingredients for one lasagna, you know, you can make 5 in basically the same amount of time. So why wouldn't you? And then you have them in your freezer for a future date or to give away as gifts. So there you go. You have the first lasagna, and now we'll look at the batch tasking part of lasagna. Okay, so here we go. When we talk about lasagna, we can truly talk about economies of scale. Because once you have made a giant pot of sauce, and once you have made your cheese filling and cooked your pasta noodles, why the heck would you only make one lasagna? It's kind of silly to think about that you would put so much time into anything and then only make one of them. So this is my secret. This is like my dirty little Christmas present secret, is that it's faster to do 3 or 6 or 9 lasagnas than it is to do almost anything. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, exactly as I showed you in the first instance, line the bottom with tomato sauce, and then I'm going to put pasta in, and I'll put the cheese filling in, and I'll go all the way through the whole process. Here's the difference here. I just wanted to point out that if you have people in your family who are like senior citizens or folks who live alone, who will never ever cook a giant lasagna, over the years, every time I make lasagna, I buy some of the small pans and I make a tiny little 1-person lasagna. That's more than 1 meal. It's maybe 2 meals for a senior living alone, or a person living alone, or a person taking them for lunch. And so while I am doing the work to make a good solid family size lasagna, and in fact, that's actually a good use for those little noodles. I'll put them in there. I also, at the same time, make 1 or 2 or 3 of the 1-person lasagnas. And I can tell you that while my mother-in-law was alive, every time I made lasagna, I made a small one for her. And then whenever was the next occasion, Mother's Day or Thanksgiving or whatever, that I might send a present over to her, I would send her lasagna. And 100% of every time I sent one, she would call me and thank me for remembering her, and also for making her a lasagna, for saving her a day of thinking about what she had to cook that night, which for seniors or people living alone, it gets to be a big deal as they're not cooking for anybody else. And you know, how much time do they really want to spend cooking? And so when I would make her a tiny lasagna that she could stick in the oven for herself, and would probably feed her for 2 days, she was so grateful. And honestly, when you look at it in comparison to the work that goes on to make, you know, a whole bunch of large lasagnas, it was nothing. It was an afterthought. I would just toss it off to the side as you see it here. And as I made all the other layers in the other lasagnas, I'd make a small lasagna too, or 1 or 2 or 3 small lasagnas. And when I sent them over, it would be to her the biggest deal of that week for sure. Okay, so for that amount of work, which is essentially the amount of work that you would spend making one lasagna, I made 5. 4 of them are kind of 9 by 13 size, which will feed easily 4 to 6 people. And then I made one small one for, you know, for a person who is on their own, or somebody wants to take to lunch and has the ability to bake it at lunch or whatever. But it's kind of nice to have one small lasagna. Lasagna tends to be a big giant family meal deal at our house anyway. If you're making it for you know, a crowd of people. And sometimes it's nice to remember that not all lasagnas go to a crowd of people. So I have I finished 5 whole lasagnas with meat and cheese. And I'm going to now label them for the freezer. I'll do the little one too. I'm going to label them for the freezer. And these will sit there for months, weeks and months, however long it takes for me to need them to either cook them or give them away. And as anybody who's ever had to cook a surprise meal for a horde of people that came without notice, or even with notice, it's great to go to the cottage or just have lasagna in the freezer at any point in time when people might be coming over. And then also to give away if somebody's having a bad week or a ill person in the family, or however that might go. A lasagna is a perfect thing to drop off because there's nothing else is required. You stick it in the oven and when it comes out, it's dinner. So there you go, 5, whoops, I'll have to fix that. 4 family-sized lasagnas and 1 small one, and ready to go into the oven for yourself or your loved ones for a special occasion or just a busy work night. And they also make the most fantastic, that's the only thing I give away for Christmas anymore, is lasagna. And hopefully you'll be confident enough to try it yourself. I know it's a lot of steps. I get that it's a lot of steps, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it. I hope you'll try it. Try it just with jarred sauce to start off with. Do the simplest version of it, and see if it turns out in a way that you like it. And I hope you'll try it again. So be confident in the kitchen. Enjoy cooking for your family. And this is Rita Smith, the #1 food fairy, signing off and wishing you all the best.
I'm so sick of reality TV. I'm so tired of my girlfriend ignoring me. I sure could use a little bit of company, some time away from all the one